Minasan namaste. Nihongo no EPG no pathshalae yokoso. Watashi wa Khanna Anita desu. Today we will study the module titled Area of Translation. It's a part of paper 10 titled Japanese Education and Teaching Methodologies. So, the aim of this module is to use and understand the diverse areas of translations. Like there are translations of literature, which is administrative, banking and translation, legal literature and translation, media and translation, creative literature and translation. Especially today's focus will be on the last one, that is creative literature and translation, although I will explain in short the other various areas as well. In creative literature, we can further divide it: poetic translation, dramatic translation, the translation of proverbs and sayings, and most of all, the translation of prose. The aim of this module is that after reading this, you shall be able to learn about or have a fair idea about the diverse areas of translation and how to use the various techniques of translation for which area. Also, you will understand the requirements which are needed to be considered while translating and the areas in which the translation could be very useful. I move on to the introduction. There would be no exaggeration if this age is acknowledged as the age of translation. In India, there are many reasons to say so. The present time is the age of technological advancements. The importance of translation can be understood by itself when in a split second one can send information across the globe from one part to the other. It is a common knowledge that India has been a British colony for a long time, and before that also Arabic, Persian, Urdu were the languages which were used by the rulers, and so the translation has been for centuries, and so the translation in India has been common means of communication between the rulers and masses. Even today, more than 70 years of independence, English language weighs heavily in our day-to-day work, and for official work which is done in English language, and then it has to be translated into various Indian languages, and in this way the source language for us is the English, and Hindi and other Indian languages become the target languages in which we give the final output for any translation, which are for use in India. So in this unit we will discuss in detail about the diverse areas of translation and try to know as how the translation is useful in various areas and what kind of a precaution one has to take in order to consider each one of them. There are sayings like, if all the barriers and boundaries are taken away, then the path of human progress will be far more bright. The translation plays the role of such light which help other people to reach at their respective destination. The role of translation has played a notable role in making and development of most of the civilizations of the world. Its penetration in the society, art, and culture is proved to be a boon, especially in case of China and Japan and Korea. It's proved to be a remarkable example that how translation could have far-reaching impact on the development of philosophy, ideology, society, and culture. And if we take the example of Japan, it is a model that proves that how Japanese society and culture of yore could be benefited by the translation in all spheres. In China, for example, with the acceptance of Buddhism and its philosophy, the need of translation of the Buddhist scriptures was needed in a big way, because Chinese felt that in order to understand the doctrines and teachings of Buddhism, they need to have it translated into Chinese. So this resulted in the translation activity during the periods of Han Dynasty onto the Tang Dynasty of China. And this Herculean task of translation of Buddhist scriptures from Sanskrit into Chinese was undertaken by the Chinese monks. We know Hyun Sang and also many Indian monks or scholars who helped them in such translations or in their endeavors to put the Indian thought into Chinese translations, which came down and had far-reaching impact in the neighboring countries like Korea, Japan, and has come down to the students of Japanese in the form of Kanyaku Butten, the scriptures translated into Chinese. Similarly, in the field of law, translation is very important. Even today, the language of court is English. Although in the lower courts, regional languages are used, but most of the proceedings happen in English. In such a situation, the translation is required to establish the communication between the lower and higher courts. As the matter reaches to the High Court, all the documents need to be translated. In this process, the role of translator is significant. In case of Japanese, the script of katakana was developed systematically to deal with the foreign words. The name for foreign words is gairaigo in Japanese. Gairaigo covers most of the technical terms related to different fields, including the legal documents. And in gairaigo or the foreign words, the English or Greek words are Japanized by using Japanese phonetics. As a part of foreign terms, there are words like argument, and in Japanized form, it is spoken as argumento. Similarly, there is a word like arbitrage deal, which would be called arbitraggi deal. Phonetically, there is some clue for the English-speaking foreigners, but there are exceptions like the word vaccine. It is an interesting formation of a foreign word and pronounced as wakuchin, and from wakuchin one is clueless as to how to arrive at vaccine. Just like our legal system, India's education system runs under the dominance of English language. On one hand, mother tongue or regional languages are used at the primary educational level, which is gradually overtaken by English language in the higher education. Translation plays a pivotal role in connecting students of a particular language to another native vernacular speaker. The media field is another outstanding example of translation. Have you ever given any thought that in this age of information, after facing how many linguistic difficulties or how many languages we get to receive such news or information? We all know today that the media is available in every regional language. We will study and analyze as how all these new broadcasts at several regional channels are processed through many languages before it reaches to us. There is a great possibility in the field of translation of official documents as well. In most of the government departments, there are jobs for translators. As a result, there is a great possibility in the field of translation of official documents. In all government departments, there are jobs of translators. It is done in order to ensure that all official works are done in Hindi and the concerned regional languages, so that the regional language can be promoted. Likewise, translation is important in the field of banking literature, children literature, cartoon films, written literature, advertisements, etc. Especially in a multilingual country with diverse languages spoken here, India, the translation formula binds the language of one corner with the language of another corner of the country. And today, in the age of 21st century, the relevance of translation has increased more as a medium of communication among many languages, societies and cultures, and also banking, literature, etc. For the purpose of translation of administrative literature, the translation training has been arranged by the Government of India. Under this, the work of translation training is handed over to the Central Translation Bureau, working under the Department of Languages under Home Ministry of the Government of India. Under this, the employees are introduced about the theory and practice of the translation from time to time in the government offices. The knowledge of text. A translator of any language is expected from time to time to take an account of the latest developments in that field. For example, a translator of the banking field should have the knowledge of the text. It means they have an understanding of the concept of the source text, which is English in case of India. Also, the translator should have full understanding of some basic things like the process of banking system, how the language is used, what kind of letters are written, and what are the other areas related to banking. It is also expected that they keep on studying minutely and try to understand the proverbs, saying, phrases specifically used in the banking language officially, and also should have the capability of finding the equivalent words in translation. So, a translation in such a case will be successful only when the translator will have a sound understanding of the text. The knowledge of the source and target language. It is necessary for the translator of any field to have the knowledge of both languages as source and target language. As far as the functional language is concerned, the responsibility of the translator is intensified because we don't get to know the functional language, rather, we need to have particular qualification and training in the field. Under such training, translators are given the training of the purpose oriented language. They are provided with the knowledge of related agencies, vocabulary list is given, terminological dictionaries are provided so that they are able to work in their respective areas. As a result, translator gets to learn the use of appropriate words at the exact place. For example, a translator dealing with the banking documents, it is mandatory to have a thorough understanding and minute inherent meanings of the terms like loan, advance, credit, debit, etc. Media and translation. With the development of technology, the horizon of media is also expanding, and apart from the electronic media, a new media called social media has surfaced. We learn so many things through the social media. Facebook, Twitter, WhatsApp, etc. come under the social media and makes us aware of the information from all across the world. Market, etc. is easily available on the social media. Even then, it is certain that just after looking at the expansion of the media, it cannot be considered as a terminological definition. Therefore, in case of the translation of foreign languages, the newspaper translation cannot be regarded as a benchmark for academics. It is usually seen that once the learner has attained a particular level of the foreign language, they should be persuaded to channelize it by pursuing academics in order to diversify or apply it further in the spheres of literature, culture, art, and also can develop it as a skill like interpretation, translation, etc. The language of media and the translation. However, we know that the language of media has its own structure, but it is not so technical to be used as the language of the science and administration, like legal documents, patents, etc. The language of media has its own flavor in order to attract the attention of the public for TRP or entertainment, etc. And the translator must bear in mind while translating and giving the output in the target language so that it has appeal to the media and to the listeners or viewers. Creative literature and translation. The horizon of creative literature is vast and covers novel, story, poetry, drama, song, musical drama, etc. The translator needs to have some particular skill and background knowledge of the subject in order to translate these forms of literature. Here, instead of discussing all forms of literature in this paper, we will focus merely on the translation of poetry and discuss about the problems being faced while translating the proverbs and sayings, as well as some aspects of translating children literature. Poetic translation. Translating poetry is very difficult. The translation of poetry is more challenging than translating any other form of creative literature. It is considered almost impossible to do it 100% correct because it is imperative to translate the meaning, word, rhythm, speed, culture, poetic aesthetics in poetry translation in the target language. The translation of poetry, in one sense, is like recreation of what is said in the source language and transfer it to the target language. So it should preferably be translated by the poet themselves because the translation of poetry is like the rebirth by assimilating the feelings of the poet. For the translation of poetry, it is desirable that translator likes to read because translation of a poem is not just a translation of words and meanings, but it also includes the understanding of symbols, images, and signs which are reflected in the gaps. The reader of literature with interest in poetry is necessarily required to become a translator of poetry. Today, the Japanese poetic forms like waka, haiku, etc. are a passion in various parts of the world. This popularity of Japanese poetry could prove to be a good vocation for the students of Japanese to earn while learning.